Okay, guys, sorry, but somebody had to state the obvious. Only simps, losers, and poor, naive souls that just quite frankly don't know any better are the only ones who still go to Medellin to meet women, for dating, etc. Now, I do think Colombia as a whole, as a country, still has potential. And while Medellin is completely screwed, as we'll go over in this video, there are some other cities that are definitely worth checking out in Colombia. And if you stick around to the end, I will mention those, so don't turn this off. So let's get down to brass tacks though. So why do I say that only simps, losers, and naive people who don't know any better are the only ones going to Medellin? Well, here's generally the typical story we hear over and over again with American, Australian, Canadian expats is number one, the obvious, they're just completely fed up with the awful dating culture and the awful women that we have back home. Then they open up TikTok or YouTube or IG Reels and they see Medellin and it's all the rage and all these weirdos are talking, yeah, come to Medellin, bro. It's so nice. Like, I'm living for 10 cents a day, which is also not true. We'll get into this. It's actually very expensive now. And I've dated 99 girls in 2 days, blah, blah, blah. And they go, that sounds like a good idea. I'm a complete noob to traveling. I barely got my passport yesterday. And you know what? Everyone's talking about this whole Medellin or Medellin, however you want to pronounce it, thing. I'll head down there. I'll follow the trend. And then they get there. And at first glance, it's everything that they made it out to be. First of all, they're just like, their jaws probably need to be like wired shut because like they're probably walking around like this all day breaking their neck because Medellin, it truly does have some of the most beautiful women. It's just a weird case of genetics. Who knows why, but like all the best genes to create a hot girl, face, boobs, ass, skin, hair, just happens to be localized in that area. But actually, like I said, there's other cities in Colombia that have this same advantage. There's of beautiful women without all the negatives that we're going to go over about Medellin in a second. So definitely do not stick around to the end because you definitely want to hear about these other cities and go there instead if you're thinking about going to Medellin. So like I said, they love it at first. And then the cold, hard reality of what this city is actually about starts to set in. So for starters, 80% of the women that they date are just going to be extremely low quality. I hear this over and over again from people who watch my channel. They say, hey, Casey, I want to get a, consulting with you. I've gone to Medellin and it just wasn't what I thought. I'm like, duh. But, because like a fourth of my subscribers, like I have 4K subscribers at the time of making this video, a fourth of my audience comes from a video, which I'll talk about, that I put out talking about the negatives about Medellin already, and yet people still want to go. But what they typically find, what I hear from, my coaching clients over and over and over again, is that all the girls that they find are into drugs. They're all into OnlyFans or webcam modeling or some type of sex work. They pretty much all ask them for money. They're covered in tattoos, etc. Just very, very low quality. And oh, by the way, quick tangent, if you guys are on these like passport bros, Facebook groups, and you see these guys, these like crusty motherfuckers from, wherever in America, like, 2 days in Medellin, I'm like, with hooking up with her, and then I got her. That's all pay for play. These are all paid for. Like, I know how it works down there. These are the same girls that they're posting in this group are the same hookers that try to add me on Facebook. Like, I literally recognize these girls, and we'll go over it. It's actually kind of a pretty small town in practice. But anyway, and the biggest problem that a lot of these poor bastards have is they don't even realize, due to the massive language barrier, most Americans who go down there don't speak Spanish. Due to this massive language barrier, they don't realize how the people in Medellin, all the people, not just the women they're dating, are very, how shall we say, unburdened by deep thoughts, if you get what I'm trying to say. So to illustrate my point, I'm going to tell a true story. Now, this is a Googleable story. I'll put like the news article and the description of this video because you guys, this is so crazy, you're not going to believe it. So once upon a time in Colombia, a truck crashed on the freeway. The truck like flipped over, but the driver was okay. And all the people from the local town come out like, hey, what happened? He's like, oh my God, I was driving my truck and I lost control. It flipped over, but no gas escaped. I'm okay, but crisis averted. What a crazy thing. They're like, oh, gas truck, you say? Interesting. They leave, they come back with like shovels and axes and buckets trying to hit this gas truck open so they can steal the gasoline. And the guy's going, the driver's like, excuse me, do you understand that like the tiniest spark and we're all dead? This is a traffic accident involving a gas truck, like get away. The people keep hitting it. The police show up on the scene. You can see in the video, there's a video about this news article. The police actually show up on the scene. They don't do shit. They don't stop the people from hitting, like they're beating at a gas truck, a traffic. And then what do you think happens? Well, you probably know how the story ends. Some genius tries to pull out the car battery. It sparks. Instantly, it blows up, like 30 people killed, another 30 badly burned and injured. And you're just wondering, how can, a human being that's, basically the same genetic material as, people from other places be so unburdened by deep thoughts that they move towards a traffic accident involving a gas truck rather than moving away from it. But this is a true story. This is one of those like only in Colombia type stories. But anyway, back to the women. Extremely unburdened by deep thoughts. There's a lot more to people than just looks. If you're going to marry a girl or do long term, they have to, have something going on up here, right? And then I actually addressed this at another video that I put out a few months ago, the video that I referred to, and it's actually my most watched video with over 60K views and counting. And I did a separate video where I covered a lot of these topics about my experience dating in Medellin versus dating in Sao Paulo and Rio in Brazil. And what I want to do now is I'm going to do in the editing, I'm going to put up my news feed in Colombia versus my feed on my Brazilian account. So I have a Colombian account and a Portuguese. I have a separate Instagram for dating in Brazil and Colombia. And you can see, based on the feed, a clear difference, right? You notice that in the Brazilian feed, the women dress very sexy, but it's very classy. And the feed of the girls in Medellin basically looks like softcore porn, okay? And that's just, it's not like, but those are just the girls you follow. You just, bro, like, shut the hell up. You guys, we'll talk about like anyone who wants to like clap back and make an objection. It's just women, bro. This is just do I just follow classy girls in Brazil? Like, no, I meet girls on Instagram. I meet girls in the same way. I look up the top venues in the city and I find out what are the top venues in the city, because the hottest girls go to the top venues, and I follow the girls that are going to the top rooftop lounges and restaurants in each city, and the results are like very, very different in Colombia. It's like the same method of finding. It's just the girls that you follow. Shut the hell up, okay? Like, because here's the thing about the culture there, right? They're all trying to attract sugar daddies. There's no shame in sex work. Like, in America and even in Brazil, there's kind of like a shame given to being in that seedy, like sex worky thing. That does not exist. It's actually like a point of pride if you're like a sex worker there. And in the same way that the male peacock tries to like flay out and display his like bright feathers to attract a mate, that's what the girls are doing by showing a lot of skin, by twerking their ass, by being basically, naked in all their photos. And as you'll find, and what, we've talked about before, is that about 80% of the beautiful women in that city are into some form of sex work, be it OnlyFans or, actual prostitution. Let me say that again, rewind. 80% of the beautiful women in that city are involved in some type of sex work. So in summary, what I said in those videos is that, and I'll say this again for the record, there are beautiful English-speaking classy women in Medellin, right? Like if 80% do sex work, that by definition means there's a 20% that does not do sex work and is very classy and very carries themselves, very educated, English-speaking, just like perfect wifey material. They are there in Colombia. They do in Medellin. Even in Medellin, they do exist. Problem is, they're just not dating gringos. So don't even try. The amount of racism or xenophobia, whatever you want to call it, of anti-gringo opinion is just absolutely obnoxious. If you guys go there and actually make friends with, the Paisa people, Paisa means somebody from Medellin. If you make friends with Paisas, you'll see there's memes that they share on Instagram like daily. It's all over TikTok. So TikTok is very like location dependent. So you won't get like a good feed until you actually like are there geographically in Medellin. But if you understand Spanish, you get on TikTok, you'll see all this anti-gringo propaganda. There's literally posters all over the city saying gringos go home. Speaking of gringo go home, hashtag gringo go home is a trending hashtag on Twitter. If you guys join these Facebook groups, like the expat Facebook groups for like foreigners living, half the people in the group aren't even expats. It's Colombians that have infiltrated the Facebook group, and all they do is talk shit on Americans and tell us to go home. There's a song about it on YouTube, a trending song, 2.7 million views in counting. And I'm going to post this screenshot on the screen right now. This is a ad for a hostel. I screenshotted this from Facebook ads. These poor bastards built a hostel and they're trying to offer some tourist experience. And all they're getting is, I know some of it's in Spanish, maybe some of it's in English on the screenshot, but they're basically saying, get the fuck out. make Medellin dangerous for gringos again, stop gentrification, don't come to my city, we don't like you, you're not wanted. I know some of it's in English, some of it's in Spanish, but, trust me, that's what they're saying. And these poor people who are running this hostel, experience, they can't even make new ads quick enough before they're flooded with comments of people saying, we don't want gringos, go home, etc. And, unfortunately, people in general, men and women, are sheep. Governments and mainstream media have zero issues controlling their people. If 2020 didn't teach you that, then, I feel sorry for you if you haven't realized that. But it's especially strong in women, right? Women tend to go with the flow even more. So when there's a wave, like a cultural movement against gringos, obviously women are going to follow that, to the fullest extent, right? So out of roughly, I have to look it up again, but let's say there's, 5 million total. I don't know off the top of my head, but so maybe 2 to 2.5 million women in that city in Medellin. The ones that are actually open to dating a gringo is probably about 2,000 to 2,500 women in the city, which is, an extremely small percentage, right, of girls that actually look decent and actually open to dating a gringo. So me and my friends see it all the time. There's even Facebook groups like, are we dating the same girl, in Medellin? And we're all dating the same girl. If you guys are in that group, you know what I mean. Like, somebody will post a girl and be like, or if I follow a girl on Instagram that's like open dating gringos, so she accepts my follow request, she's followed by every other gringo in the city because there's only 2,000 to 2,500 women there who still want to date gringos, and they're all getting passed around through the same expats. And if you guys doubt this, if you doubt what I'm saying, remember I talked about, I referenced 2 videos I made earlier that are on a similar subject. I'll put screenshots on the screen so you guys can kind of see what I'm talking about. I'll post a couple of them. I've been here for 16 years, totally agree with everything you said. Colombian guy here that lives half the time in the US and half in Colombia. Thank you for telling all the men the truth. This video speaks 100% facts. I live in Medellin for several years, absolute waste of time. Every friendship will backstab you. Even if you take all the precautions, you can get scopolamine. Happened to me, ruined my life. And overall, they are just not what they appear to be. I'm a gringo who lived in Colombia for 5 years. Everything stated here is spot on, blah, 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 blah. I mean, guys, I don't delete the comments that don't disagree with me. So I'll put a link to the previous video where I'm basically going over a lot of the same stuff, right? How the women don't like gringos, how the very few percentage of women that are open dating gringos are the lowest of the low. Tattoos, they snort this drug called 2C, this like pink cocaine bullshit drug that they snort, all into sex work. Like, if they're dating gringos, they're into sex work, they have an OnlyFans, something like that, right? I put another video about that, link in the description. I'll probably put it on the screen right now too. I'm reading to you the comments. And again, you can go to that video and click on it. There's probably about 20 to 30% of the guys who are just like, oh, he's just jealous, da, da, da. But like 70, 80% are like hardcore agreeing with me. So I know some idiot wants to comment on this video. You're wrong. I've been to Medellin and I'm dating super quality women and they're so friendly to gringos, da, da, da. You may want to think before you make that comment, because you may look like a retard, because when you click over to my video with 60K views and 600 plus comments with 80% of people backing up everything that I fucking say, you may want to check yourself before you come on this video and say, you either don't speak Spanish and you're dating a retard, but you don't speak the same language, or you're dating, you're like sugar daddy relationship or something like that, or she's like a 6, bro. Just like, I was the man in Medellin. I gave up a whole life. I was famous for throwing amazing, all the B-roll that you've been seeing is me with my amazing parties. I had an amazing network out there. Why do you think I left it all, right? Like, I didn't just, leave it all one day just because, right? So basically, if you think you're going to find a long-term potential girl there, I hate to break it to you, it ain't going to happen. What is likely to happen, though, is that you get drugged and robbed and perhaps murdered. So the U.S. Embassy, I'll put the screenshot on the screen. I have it on my phone. I'll just read a little bit of it. But the U.S. Embassy is aware of 8 suspicious deaths of private citizens, blah, 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 blah. They use dating apps. Yeah, last year has seen an increase of involving the use of online dating applications to lure victims, blah, 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 blah. Drugging, robbery, overdose involved. Yeah, so they're basically saying that through the use of Tinder, basically is what they're saying, that these girls are drugging and robbing gringos. So at the time of me making this video, there's actually closer to 10 Americans that were killed in the last 60 days, around double that if you include all foreigners, not just Americans. And the scary thing is, this like 20 foreigners that died in the last 60 days at the time of making this video. There's 10 times that many people who were drugged and robbed and survived. Just because there's 20 deaths does not mean that there were 20 druggings. The overwhelming majority of people survive their ordeal. My good friend Owen Cook, RSD Tyler, one of the top dating coaches in the world, said that he heard this statistic from his sources that 1 in 16 male tourists gets drugged and robbed while they're in Colombia. 1 in 16, okay? How much of a simp or loser do you have to be to go date in Medellin after watching this video? And when the facts, 1 in 16 chance. And listen, guys, first of all, that number, 1 in 16, my anecdotal evidence just completely supports that. Like through my friends and my circles of if I think I know, 45 guys in Medellin and at least 3 or 4 have been drugged. Like my anecdotal evidence is spot on with that statistic. And if you think won't happen to me, you're the exact guy that they're going to get, because they get young, sexy, good-looking guys as well. And they will even do this thing now. Well, they will date you for weeks or months before they rob you. That's what happened to the Asian comedian. I'm not even going to try Tao Zherzhong or whatever. He's this famous case of this Asian comedian that died there recently. I think he had some sugar baby relationship going on. We were sending her money and simping over her. From my understanding, if he wasn't, forgive me. I'm not claiming that as a fact. But this guy was dating this chick for months before she finally had him kidnapped and murdered. And even if you're not a simp sending these girls, I know good looking guys who dating girls for a while and then they just turn around and drug them one day, right? It's because Medellin, is still messed up to this day from the original, Pablo Escobar, Cartel de Medellin culture of, fast money. The mentality there is well, listen, surely going to school, struggling to make a business work, trying and failing for many years, and then finally making a success after a lot of studying or a lot of, trial and error with a business, well, surely that's dumb, because that takes a long time. Do you see that's slow? Whereas killing people, smuggling drugs, selling your body, etc., that's fast money. So do you understand? That's smart, right? That's what smart people do, is go for fast money. Well, you do it, that's just how they think out there. So robbing and stealing, and given the fact that they have absolutely zero empathy for gringos. It's funny. They kill us for sport. They kill 20 foreigners or let's say 10 to 15 foreigners a month at least out there in Colombia. And in the past 2 years, I think that there's been 1 or 2 female Colombianas that have been killed by foreigners. And then every time that happens, it's oh my God, it makes front page news, and there's a new wave of racism or xenophobia, and it's all they talk about on Twitter and social networks, and oh my God, how could this guy get in the country? It's so sad, these piece of shit foreigners. It's well, you're killing us at 1,000 times rate that we're killing y'all, but thanks for the empathy. It's not a problem when foreigners get killed, because we're just all sex tourists and we don't matter, right? And it's just a really fucked up situation. And in general, they had this weird fascination with foreigners in general there. It's in America, you grow up, I remember me growing up in Los Angeles, I would be, in kindergarten, right? I'd be seated next to an Arabic person, a Japanese person, a Mexican person, and, I'm a white guy, and you just grow up around that. But in Medellin, it's always oh my God, he's a foreigner. He comes from a place that's not here. Spanish and the particular paisa accent of Spanish isn't his primary language. Whoa, a foreigner. That's like an alien from another galaxy. They just have a really weird low IQ thinking about foreigners. And, if you want even more evidence to support my theory that only simps and losers still are the ones that go to Medellin, and naive guys, listen, if you're just naive and uninformed and you went to Medellin or you're there now, well, now hopefully the eyes have been opened, but just take a look at the expats that live there for the most part. Again, I will say the top 1 or 2 of expats that live in Medellin are the coolest, red pill, successful entrepreneurs, ladies, men that you'll ever fucking meet. That was my circle of friends there. And the other 98% are just the most pathetic, toxic, bitter, nasty. It's a prerequisite for being a Medellin expat is you have to have the world's worst social skills, the absolute worst. So guys who couldn't get pussy from a dead cat back home. They're literally they're all the same, right? So it's all the same group of guys who dates, like they pass around that same 2,000 to 2,500 group of women that date gringos, which by the way, all they're doing is taking advantage of a unique situation that doesn't exist in like any other dating market that I can think of really, maybe a couple other ones, but it's very rare. In the case where, at least for the small percentage of girls that have decided they're open to dating a gringo, you have zero competition from the local guys, like none. The local guys are just scrawny and meek and weird and dumb and a very like effeminate affect that they have. And you, like as an American guy, you're taller, better looking, orders of magnitude more money, orders of magnitude higher intelligence, orders of magnitude more masculinity. So it's like you're coming there, like you don't get this in Buenos Aires, Argentina. You certainly don't get this in Brazil. I talked about some other videos. Brazil's not an easy dating market. I live in Brazil now. I live in Sao Paulo. Like, am I dating, beautiful women and getting success with them? Sure. But I have to like fight for everything. Like it is like a 12-round Tyson fight. Like I have to kill everything I eat out here. There's no freebies. There's no like, oh, you're a gringo with blue eyes and we matched and I'm the one. Like, dude, the flake rate, like they're amazing women. Brazilian women are amazing women if you can get them out. But the flake rate is so high because you have so much competition from the locals. So all these guys are doing is they're taking advantage of this. And listen, I have no problem with maximizing your gringo foreign advantage. As a matter of fact, I always talk about this in my other videos about my like quote unquote small town strategy where, you go to a small town where the most extreme example of this, not to pick on Colombia again, is not actually, they don't do this in Medellin, but in small coastal cities, the men there literally fornicate with animals. So for me to come into a small town and I'm competing against the locals who are literally having sex with donkeys, it's pretty easy for me to stand out as like the best option. So I have no problem with guys. Like, I don't think they're exploiting it, but it is kind of weird that they're just choosing a city based only on that. And then like the danger, the low IQ, the racism, etc., the low quality of expats that live there, the backstabby, culture of the people there isn't enough to deter them, right? Like that's literally all they care about. And they're all the same, right? Talking about the American Canadian expats, like zero social skills, toxic, entitled, fat, out of shape, weird. And they all do the same thing. They all virtue signal that they're there for the culture and the food and they're not there for the women. Give me a fucking break. Like, I'm there for the culture. All they do, like, they're all there for the women, yet they all virtue signal and say that they're not there for the women. And then they marry like, a 6.5 or a 7, the first decent girl that looked their way, who's, probably very low quality, probably has, no brain, doesn't work, doesn't contribute to society, probably has a lot of tattoos, etc. And, again, these are the guys, zero confidence, zero game, completely feminized behavior. So honestly, as much as I bag on, the bad culture, the fast money and unburdened by deep thoughts culture of the locals, the expats are actually much worse, if that's possible. So another thing you can like, check this out, right? So imagine again, so all the expats, we really know what we're going there for. Like you don't go to like a dangerous third world city and start a whole new life there if you're not there for a good reason, which is the women. So imagine this for further proof and evidence about pathetic and lack of social skills these are, that a guy, say a guy like me, for instance, invites you to a 5-to-1 penthouse party with only beautiful girls, as you're seeing with all the B-roll here, filtered as best as I possibly could to keep all the hookers out, probably, 10 to 20% sex workers, maybe 80% are not sex workers, which is a miracle to pull off in that city. No underage girls, no drugs, no weird shit going on. You can meet and network with other cool guys. Open bar, like I said, 5-to-1 ratio of beautiful girls that are not hookers for $200, aka not like nothing to a wealthy business owner, which is, a lot of the expats there, or like, even if you're making 4 or 5K a month, you can certainly you can fill your calendar with leads for like 3 weeks at one of my parties with the amount of numbers and Instagrams you can get, right? But I actually had trouble selling my parties. Imagine that. 5-to-1 penthouse party, open bar, meet the coolest guys in the city for $200. No hookers, no underage girls, all cool, all above the board, all cool shit. How sad and antisocial do you have to be to say no to that? And lastly, of all this stuff that we're talking about, as if Medellin, wasn't bad enough, it's not even cheap to live there anymore. A nice 2-bedroom apartment furnished in the city could easily be $3,000 or $4,000 a month. You're basically paying Los Angeles and Miami prices now to live in that city, okay? One thing I forgot to mention that I'm adding now in the editing of this video is the complete impossibility of making friends with the locals in Medellin, Colombia, because there are a lot of trashy, low-class expats that go there, but for the small percentage of you watching this who are like me, right, like the higher class, right, you're into business, entrepreneurship, maybe you're doing, sales teams, crypto, you're into AI, biohacking, fitness, health, you're into all that stuff, you're a very high-performing individual. How are you going to make friends with the local guys in Medellin that are so unburdened by deep thoughts that they couldn't point to where Canada is on a map? They don't know what a hexagon is. They've never heard of ChatGPT. So it's going to be really hard to overcome that and find common ground. And no cool expat in the history of humanity has ever really made true, lasting friendships with the locals there. Also because they're extremely cliquey and they don't want to be your friend. The very small percentage of, upper class, more in their head type of guys there, educated, etc. They hate gringos. It's like that wealthy class of Colombian that like despises gringos the most. You're never going to be able to penetrate that circle as a foreigner. There's extreme racism and prejudice and xenophobia towards them. In 7 years of living in Medellin, Colombia, I made one local friend who ended up stealing money out of my wallet when I wasn't looking. So I actually made 0 friends in 7 years living in Medellin. 7 days of living in Brazil, I met 2 super cool friends. They speak English. They work for American companies. They're red pilled. They're into all the same stuff. We can talk about all the same high level stuff that I was mentioning, right? Like artificial intelligence, crypto, sales, building a business, hiring, all the things like that. So just another thing to consider, another reason why Medellin is basically screwed as a city. Okay, so now as I promised, we're going to talk about the better cities, the better options. So Medellin is completely screwed, but I do think, believe it or not, Colombia as a whole has some potential. You are going to get the whole unburdened by deep thoughts thing in most of these cities, but at least you can maybe find a few exceptions and some girls that at least have good values, don't have anti-foreigner, anti-gringo values, not into sex work, not into drugs, like, not into robbing and killing, like you see in Medellin, kidnapping, all that stuff. And these cities would be, I guess roughly in this order actually, would be Bucaramanga, Barranquilla, Santa Marta, and Sincelejo. Now, if you go to a place like Sincelejo, that's a really small town. I would imagine it's just like completely open and for the taking, but be very boring, I'm sure. Barranquilla, I've never actually been there, but I've heard it's just like a really boring city, and it's just like, everyone says it's just like depressing, but something I've talked about before, it's kind of an inverse, right? The best cities for dating, like the small towns, the girls aren't spoiled by wealthy millionaire guys that they quite frankly don't deserve, taking them on lavish dates, too many tall, good-looking guys options. Like big cities that have fun stuff to do and a lot of competition, that are like the worst for dating are the funnest. And then the cities that are the best for dating, the small, boring cities, it's like you have to choose one or the other. Like what's a fun city to live in with a lot of stuff to do, a lot of other foreigners, a lot of cool stuff happening, versus what is, like good for dating, right? So, but Barranquilla would probably be the biggest, not probably, it would be the biggest. Santa Marta, like I said, it'd be, in comparison to Medellin, virtually untapped and for the taking. And like I said, in a lot of those places, you also get the small town strategy. And by the way, guys, I've been showing, B-roll of me on the screen for a lot of this video. Every single girl that you're seeing on the screen, I met on dating apps or Instagram. And if you want my free guide to how to do photography the proper way for Instagram and dating apps so you can, appear very high status and actually get a lot of matches and get responses to your DMs, go to my Instagram, RedbeardRants1, and DM me the word photography. Also, if you want to see the original video where I talk about the problems of dating as a foreigner, I'm putting, of dating in Medellin as a foreigner, I'm putting that on the screen right now. And also in the description is my video where I compare dating culture in Brazil to, like Sao Paulo and Rio at least, to dating culture in Medellin, Colombia. And that is all I have for today's, guys. Remember to follow me on Instagram, RedbeardRants1, subscribe, and don't go to Medellin. There's a big world. There's, believe it or not, females, women, double X chromosome people exist in other cities besides Medellin. I swear to God. Okay, guys. Peace.